Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Piece, East Blue Saga, Romance Dawn Arc, Episode 3, Morgan versus Luffy. Who's this mysterious, beautiful young girl? The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of exactly what happens within this episode. Luffy and Zoro defeat Captain Morgan before leaving town, with Zoro having agreed to become his first crewmate, and they leave as town heroes while Kobe is allowed to enter the Marines, achieving his dream. We'll now go into a more detailed summary of the episode and give our opinions and observations and criticisms as we go. So as our last episode left us with a bit of a cliffhanger. We're now picking up right where we left off, with the Marines firing at Luffy and Luffy deflecting the bullets, proclaiming that he's going to be the Pirate King. Zoro, of course, reacts with shock, but Kobe tells him that Luffy's really serious about becoming the Pirate King, and then Luffy shows Zoro that he's retrieved his treasure, but he wasn't sure which of the swords were his, so he just grabbed all of them. Zoro lets him know that he uses the three swords style, so they're all his. Luffy then asks if he'll take them since he'll be an enemy of the Navy if he fights Morgan. With a smile, Zoro says that he'll be his pirate if dying in this courtyard is the alternative. Luffy, of course, celebrates Zoro joining his crew, forgetting the danger that they're currently in. And to the sides, the Marines are still in shock, and Morgan explains that he must have eaten a devil fruit. He then expands on what devil fruits are, that whoever eats one gains unworldly abilities of many different types, but almost nothing is known about them. However, the secrets to them lie within the Grand Line. Luffy, meanwhile, is struggling with the ropes trying to untie Zoro. Morgan then proclaims that no matter any who oppose him get executed, and if guns are useless, then they'll have to chop them up. The Marines then attack with their swords drawn, while Luffy notes that the ropes somehow got a little bit tighter. Zoro demands his swords as Kobe, off to the side, panics. Now, obviously, in this scene, we're getting a little bit more information about devil fruits. Once again, they are mentioned, which they haven't mentioned before, but we're getting a little bit more of an expansion on them, learning that they provide abilities, which we already knew from Luffy's rubberness, but that they'll give different abilities depending on the fruit that's eaten, that some are incredibly amazing, others not so much. We also learn, of course, that the secrets to them are in the Grand Line, which we've been foreshadowing quite a bit, that that's our goal, that's where we're heading. But Morgan himself doesn't really know a lot about the details of devil fruits beyond those pieces of information, which of course implies then that there is more to be expanded on again in the future. But we're getting some new information here that we hadn't quite gotten before. And then we also just have the Zoro officially saying that he's going to be Luffy's one of his pirates and his crew. And then we have Luffy struggling with the ropes and them somehow becoming tighter, which is just a little comedic moment to lighten the mood overall. And so, because Luffy can't untie the ropes, Zoro is just given his sword so that he is able to stop the oncoming attack, saying that he's going to kill them if they move, while off to the side, Luffy kind of fanboys over, look how strong my new crew member is. Isn't it great? Zoro once again reiterates that he'll join Luffy now that he's an enemy of the Navy, but says that his goal is still only to fulfill his ambition of being the world's greatest swordsman, and that if he has to give it up, Luffy will need to accept responsibility and apologize to him. Luffy from the side says that his ambition sounds cool, and that the Pirate King would need no less than the greatest swordsman in the world on his crew. They, of course, share some smiles, and then Morgan, who's off to the side, grows impatient, yelling for the Marines to not just stand around, as Zoro's currently blocking them and they're kind of frozen because they don't want him to kill them. And Luffy tells Zoro to duck using his newly introduced Gamu Gamu whip, henceforth we'll just call it a whip, to send the Marines that are behind Zoro flying. Zoro asks what he is, and once again Luffy confirms for all listening that he ate the gum gum fruit and is therefore a rubber human. Morgan then ego trips again, ordering all of the Marines who showed weakness just now to shoot themselves in the head, as he has no need for weak soldiers. Zoro then comments that the soldiers are going mad as Kobe yells for Luffy to crush this navy specifically. Luffy, of course, runs forward and punches Morgan, who blocks his initial punch with his axe, yelling that rankless bums have no right to defy him, saying he's Captain Axe Hand Morgan. Luffy then pauses so he can give a little bow and introduce himself and say that it's nice to meet him because he has manners. Morgan then attacks and Luffy counters, getting Morgan onto the ground, and he starts punching him repeatedly while accusing him of ruining Kobe's dream. Now, I have to wonder, did Morgan, at any point in time, actually think that anybody was going to actually follow his order and shoot themselves in the head? I feel like that's the point where people would be like, okay, this cult's not for me. I'm waking up and I'm going to shoot you instead. Because I don't think most people are going to shoot themselves in their head for weakness because that's considered treachery against their leader. And then I just love that Luffy he has manners. He has good manners. You know, he pauses in the fight just so that he can just reintroduce himself more politely, say that it's good to meet him. It's just one of those funny little moments. But he's so considerate, you know? Even in the first episode, he was kind enough to note that the man that was laying on the floor, he could catch a cold by sleeping there. And now, you know, he's very kindly showing his manners and introducing himself properly while they're fighting before, you know, getting him on the ground and punching his face multiple times. So at some point off screen, Helmeppo is woken up and made his way down to the courtyard. He is now holding a gun to Kobe's head and yells at Luffy to stop punching his dad. Luffy doesn't stop punching Morgan. So Helmeppo, a little bit taken aback, yells again if he's stupid, saying to pay attention, he has a hostage here. It's only when Zoro calls out to Luffy that Luffy decides to stop and glance over, staring for a bit before he just smiles. When Luffy smiles, Kobe starts a self-sacrificial speech about not wanting to ruin Luffy's dream and being prepared to die. Luffy just says that he knows, telling Helmeppo that Kobe is seriously prepared to die. Morgan then attempts to attack from behind, and Kobe yells a warning, which Luffy ignores, sending his pistol fist at Helmeppo and punching him in the face before saying nice to Zoro, who he had trusted to stop Morgan's attack. Zoro, of course, smiles back, saying it was his pleasure, calling Luffy his captain for the first time. Zoro then puts his sword away, telling the observing Marines that anyone who still wants to capture them can come forward. But the Marines instead throw their caps into the air, starting to celebrate their freedom from tyranny, which of course makes Kobe happy as he sees that not all of the Marines were corrupted, that they were just scared. And then Zoro faints with hunger as the series has implied to this point he has gone 3 weeks without food, except for the little bit of rice slash mud balls yesterday, the day before. So, not sure that Kobe was the best choice of hostage here. Obviously, one, he has no self-confidence, so pretty self-sacrificial. He did a whole speech about it. Two, he and Luffy are about to leave each other, part ways, and obviously Zoro's the actual crew member, but Kobe is the weak link, and that is just the type of thing that a person like Helmeppo is going to target. He's going to find the weakest and then try to exploit that weakness. He's not going after Zoro. He's not going after Luffy himself. So, I mean, Out of all the options available, Kobe was the best choice for a hostage, but just from the emotional standpoint, I'm still not a fan of Kobe. He's starting to grow on me. This is where we stop hating him, but he's still dislikable. Obviously, I love that Luffy and Zoro are already a well-coordinated fighting machine. They've got trust, they've got rapport. You know, Luffy not stopping his attack because he knows Zoro already has his back. And of course, Zoro with his first time calling him captain. And it's a sweet moment. And I feel like this is why Zoro was officially the first. We may have seen Nami on screen first, but this is why Zoro joins the crew first. And of course, they're, along with some future crew members, kind of the main attack force of this crew. That's what they're going to be. So it's great to see already that they've got that ability to fight together and coordinate their attacks. Although I do have to make one little note that this episode was called Morgan versus Luffy. And while it is true that Luffy did get him on the ground and punch him, the final attack, the winning blow, came from Zoro. So I really feel like it should have been named Morgan versus Zoro, not Morgan versus Luffy, because while Luffy did get some punches in, Zoro is the one who ultimately gave the killing blow, and the one that Luffy gave the killing blow to was Helmeppo, not Morgan. But, and by killing blow, I mean like he didn't actually die, this is a children's thing, but the blow that defeated him, the defeating blow is what I should call it, was given by Zoro, not Luffy. Just wanted to point that out. Now we take a little break from our resolved battle in the courtyard to return to the Marine base interior, where Nami has tied up some Marines before entering Morgan's office, and she starts snooping around. She snoops through his drawers and his valuables, and she's clearly looking for something very specific. Eventually, she notices a safe, and she moves the barrels that are covering it out of the way before opening up this safe, which appears to already be unlocked. And she celebrates finding what she thinks is the map to the Grand Line. But in fact, Buggy has flashily taken it. And she, of course, is upset by this and crumples the parchment up in disappointment, though she still takes it with her anyways. Now, it's very nice of Buggy. Buggy is one of my favorite characters. Actually, most of the characters are my favorite characters. I like a lot of the characters in this series. That's one of the things that makes it so great. Now, obviously, it's so nice of Buggy to tell the Marines and any other thieves exactly who to go after to get the map. It's so thoughtful. They could be scrambling. They could be wondering, who has taken this? Where is it? What has happened to my map? But nope, he very kindly says, if you want to get this back, I have flashily taken it. Come at me. Come for me. Nami, I kind of go back and forth on because on the one hand, she's likable, but then on the other hand, she does have some moments where she's like, I think in Japanese comedy, it's like the straight man is what they call it, where like you've got the really comedic characters and they're the one that stays serious and kind of holds them in line. So her as a character, I do tend to go back and forth on depending on what scene we're in. But overall, I do like Nami as well, so I'm glad to see that we're starting to see a little bit more of her, and of course, we're going to see more of her in the future as she will eventually become a recurring crew member. So we now join Kobe, Zoro, and Luffy in Ririka's restaurant, where Zoro has eaten until he's been stuffed, while Rika giggles, and then he looks over and asks how Luffy, who is still eating, can possibly have a bigger appetite than him. Luffy just replies that the food is good, confirming with Kobe, who then agrees and thanks Ririka for feeding them. She, of course, tells him that it's no problem since they were the ones who saved their town, and Rika tells Luffy that he's amazing, and he agrees, saying that he's going to be even more amazing as he's going to be king of the pirates one day. And he even has a crew now. Zoro then asks how many are in the crew, and Luffy reveals that he's the first. And Zoro asks if it even counts as a crew with just two people. Luffy says that they're strong, so it's fine that there's just the two of them. And then Zoro asks about their pirate ship, and Luffy points to the little boat that is at the shore that a dog is currently peeing on. Zoro, of course, finds this hilarious and starts laughing, and Luffy assures him that one day they're going to have a big ship, and that it's going to be, very big, and there's going to be a flag, and he, of course, imagines himself on like a multi-masted monstrosity. Kobe, off to the side, comforts Zoro, saying that he thinks Luffy was born without any sense of planning. And Zoro starts to question himself about having made Luffy his captain. But Luffy says that they're going to get more crew members before long, and Rika asks where they're going next. Luffy, of course, says that they're going straight to the Grand Line. Kobe spits his juice, panicking that he can't go with just two people. No way, no way, no way. So many no ways. Rika asks if it's actually that dangerous. And Kobe, whose sole purpose in the series right now is to explain things, explains to us how there is a red line, which is a land mass that basically in a line circles the world one way, and then the Grand Line, which is a very strong sea, like sea with a very strong current, circles the world the other way. And explaining that Gold Roger, who had tamed all the world had to offer, hid the One Piece, which is all the world had to offer, in the Grand Line, which has led pirates everywhere going there to find it, and it is now known as the Pirate Graveyard. This is information we've received in previous episodes as well, so more of a recap than anything else. Ririka then adds that customers have said that no one who goes to the Grand Line ever returns, but Luffy is completely unbothered as that is where the One Piece is, so that is where he will need to go. And Zoro agrees that it can't be helped in that case because that's where they have to go. Kobe starts panicking even though he is planning to leave and part ways, and Zoro asks him why he's panicking, saying out loud what we all have been thinking all along. Why is Kobe panicking since he isn't coming? Kobe explains that because Luffy is his friend, he then will panic on his behalf, and then he gets a little bit self-conscious, but Luffy agrees that they will part ways, but they'll always be friends. And then Kobe tells us a bit of his pitiful history of not having had friends before, or people who would fight for his sake, or the desire to fight for what he wants, but that they taught him to believe in himself, and now he'll make his dream come true somehow. Zoro then points out that he should be worried more about himself than Luffy, since he was there when they fought the Marines and spent 2 years as a Choi boy on Alvida's ship. Dot dot dot. Now, I do love that Zoro said the quiet part out loud. Kobe from day one has been panicking on Luffy's behalf, interfering in Luffy's dream, wanting to stop him, projecting his own cowardice onto Luffy, his own weakness onto Luffy, his own insecurity onto Luffy, who obviously has none of those things. Luffy is very secure, very confident, very strong. And at least now we get some sort of clarity that, oh, all of this interference is just coming from a place of liking him, being friends. And it's nice that Luffy says that they are friends. And by this point, I think he's let him tag along despite his annoyingness long enough to prove that, yeah, Luffy does have some sort of affection for him. And Kobe has, to be fair, made some efforts to become better. And as I keep saying, we are enduring right now, but we know that he does get better. We know it's coming eventually. Of course, we don't see really a better Kobe until the Water 7 saga, which is a long ways off, but we know it's coming. So we have that. Also, Zoro, in addition to saying the quiet part aloud, also notes Kobe's kind of checkered past, how, he's fought against Axe-Hand Morgan, well, stood off the side to witness the fight against Axe-Hand Morgan, really. And of course was on Alvida's ship. So it's like, here you are panicking on our behalf when we aren't worried. Meanwhile, you kind of maybe want to worry about yourself there, friend. So I do like that Zoro kind of points that out because I feel like I'm not the only one who thinks that way. I mean, there are people who probably do like Kobe as a character, especially because the live action that came out recently does also kind of make him a little bit better. They kind of make him halfway between his initial state and his better state, but they also give him a bigger role, so they had to do that because otherwise people would be like, I don't want to see this person again. But we're not talking about the live action here. We're talking about this this anime, and of course, how dislikable he is at this point, though we do know he gets better. So we're going to leave Kobe to the side now, and I'm going to make a point. This is more of a speculation rather than like an opinion or a question or anything like that. But Kobe's like, oh, you can't go to the Grand Line with just two of you. It's a pirate graveyard, blah, 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 right? It's so dangerous. All the pirates are there. And I feel like there's an argument where having a very, very small, like two-person crew and like a little boat could work. Like when you enter with a giant fleet or a huge boat, a huge ship, you're noticeable. You're basically putting a target onto your back. But if you're coming in maybe at night with a little boat, just two people, you could kind of just like slip past under the radar, go on your little adventure, avoid the biggest troubles. Of course, that's not what Luffy wants. Luffy wants the adventure. Luffy wants to make the name for himself. Luffy wants to be the Pirate King. So that would never work for them. But just like in theory, if it wasn't Luffy and his personality, I feel like there's an argument where you could kind of just scoot under the radar with just like a little teeny crew that nobody's going to see as a threat. Nobody's going to even really notice out on the ocean. Just saying, an argument could be made. So after they're done eating, the Marines, led by Ripper, then enter the restaurant, asking if Luffy and Zoro, and at this point Kobe as well, are really pirates. Luffy happily informs him that he gained a member and became a private pirate crew just now. Ripper says that they appreciate that they had saved the town and the base, but as they now know of their pirate status, he needs to ask them to leave the town immediately, but that out of obligation and courtesy, they aren't going to contact the headquarters. The villagers protest as they're still distrustful of the Navy and they dislike them kicking out their heroes, but Luffy gets up saying that they should go anyways and thanks Ririka for the food. Kobe stays behind and lingers, and Ripper then asks if he's with them. Kobe does his usual, his I'm afraid, I'm hesitant, I can't make a decision, I'm frozen with indecision and panic routine. But Luffy takes it out of his hands by beginning to reveal that he knows what Kobe's done until now and tells the Navy that basically, he worked with Alvida, blah, blah, blah. And then Kobe snaps and hits him, which Luffy allows the first hit to hit him, and then he hits back, kind of beating Kobe up until Ripper says that that's enough, and so does Zoro. Ripper then informs everybody that it's very clear that they aren't crewmates and orders Luffy to leave at once. Luffy kind of half smiles at Kobe before leaving, making Kobe realize that it was entirely set up. And then he starts internally musing on his gratitude to Luffy, but also that nothing's really changed with him. He's made some moves to try to become better, but it hasn't really stuck or sunk in at this point. So then he gets up, finds his courage in order to beg for the chance to be a Marine. At first, a Marine comes up to Ripper saying that they're against it because they still don't trust Kobe and that there's always the opportunity for a pirate to set a spy in the Navy. But Kobe then reiterates that he is determined to be a Marine and that's his childhood dream. He wants it so badly. And Ripper tells him not to take the Navy lightly, but does give him permission to join them. Obviously, at this point, Kobe gets his dream that he mentioned he wanted to join the Marines. Now he's joining the Marines. They are parting ways as promised. This is the last we have to see of Kobe for at least a little while. So we as, or at least myself as the audience, am thrilled by that. I also found it very satisfying to see Luffy kind of beat him up. I know it was all fake. It was staged. It was done on purpose to show the Marines that Kobe's not one of their actual crew members and that they aren't friends anymore. He's just a tag along, something like that. But it was just so satisfying given my dislike of this character, which is extreme. Like, more extreme than it really should be, but just I really don't like this character at this point. Like I said, he gets better. We endure it now. But even if it was fake, even if I knew it was fake, I was so satisfied. I was like, yes, finally. Because I've wanted to punch him in the face since I met him. So thank you, Luffy, for doing that for us. And then we come to our final block of scenes to round out this arc and this episode. So we have Nami setting sail while looking again at Buggy's message that he has flashily taken the map to the Grand Line. And then we see Zoro and Luffy approaching their boat. Zoro comments that he wouldn't be surprised if the Marines had seen through Luffy's little act, but Luffy basically says at this point Kobe has to handle it on his own. They're moving on. Zoro then says that it's a nice way to leave without looking back, without having a way back, that it's very pirate-like. Kobe then from the shore comes out and yells to Luffy while Ririka and Rika are standing off to the side of him, and he salutes Luffy, thanking him, saying that he'll never forget all he's done for him. Zoro then comments that he's never seen a Marine salute a pirate before, while Luffy just laughs and they start setting sail. Luffy then yells back that they should meet again sometime as they're pulling away, and then Ripper and the other Marines have also come down to the shore, and Ripper has all hands salute Luffy as he's leaving and says that Kobe has a great friend there, which of course makes Kobe cry yet again, before adding that what they've just done is in violation of naval law and they'll not get to eat food for 3 days as punishment. Luffy, then back on the boat, excitedly declares their crew official, and Zoro comments that many good adventures await them before asking about Luffy's obsession with being the Pirate King. And Luffy explains that he swore to a certain man that someday he would gather the best crew, find the world's greatest treasure, and become the Pirate King. We then see on screen that Shanks putting the hat on Luffy is silhouetted, and Luffy adds that this straw hat knows, while, pulling it down over his eyes, and Zoro just says that he sees what he's saying. Luffy then gets all excited again and yells that they are heading to the Grand Line as they set sail towards the sunset. So obviously we get the Marines coming down and basically covering Kobe, saluting to the pirates by saluting themselves as well. And of course, he did save their town and them technically at the base because they were all living under the thumb of Morgan. But I have to think that if I was one of those Marines, especially because we know in the last episode that not all of them are down with the whole Luffy pirates saving us, we're grateful thing, because one of them does protest Kobe's introduction to the Marines. You're there, your commanding officer, the lieutenant says, salute, so you salute, and then they go, oh, and by the way, now that you've followed this order, you don't get to eat for 3 days. I'd be a little bit pissed off if I wasn't completely on board. Obviously, if I agreed, I'd be fine with it because, I agreed with the sentiment. But if I didn't, I have to say, I'd be a little bit peeved. I'd be a little upset with that particular order. And then we move on. And we, of course, have Luffy and Zoro setting sail, riding off into the sunset. And we also get some nice foreshadowing into Luffy's backstory with the origin of the hat, with the promises being made, and like the origin of his dream and his goal. And obviously we're very excited at this point because now we like Luffy, we want to know more about him, and we're foreshadowed that we're going to be getting that backstory. So overall, a great ending to both this episode and to the first arc of the series. And so now we're getting into our rankings portion of this video. We rank on two lists, a personal list that's emotion-based, and then a mostly objective list, which is void of emotion, though bias and judgment still do apply. We now get to our mostly objective rank values that I feel apply to this episode. So we will start with the positive. So first we have our resolved battle, which is worth 2 points. We've resolved the versus Morgan battle. And then second to that, we have Kobe. He gets to join the Marines. He achieves his dream and is now found his courage to follow his dream. So that growth is worth 3 points. We then have some multi-arc main character development. And this is the part where we find out Zoro's fighting style. So obviously we were introduced to Zoro in the previous episode, but he was tied to a post. Now we get to actually see him using his three sword style. We get to see him actually fighting the bad guys, which in this case were the Marines under Morgan's control, and learn a bit more about him in that sense. And so that is worth 4 points. And then lastly, we have the world building. We get the expansion and explanation on what exactly the devil fruits are, not full details yet, but a more expanded view of them. Kobe partially explains how the geography of the world works, noting both the red and grand lines and how they each cross the world in opposite directions. And so that is worth another 4 points, which brings us up to 13. However, there is one negative to point out, and that is, of course, the failed emotional impact. Now, Kobe got his dream. I'm fairly certain we were supposed to be all happy for him. But as he is such a dislikable character, I was like, meh, okay, fine, he got his dream. Good job. Like, I didn't care about it. It didn't elicit any sort of emotion in me because I was like, I don't like this character. I'm just glad he's gone now for a while, and I don't have to see him on my screen all the time. So, I feel like that was a failed emotional impact moment. The other moment that I felt that they were trying to elicit some emotion from was, of course, the Marine salute. And again, I was like, that is so nice of them to salute him goodbye. Cover for Kobe, give them the salute. They did save the town. But honestly, it kind of more felt like, well, that's the least that they could do, given that they kicked him out right after he saved them. Gave him enough time to have a meal, and then out you go. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's the least they could have done. Like, it's sweet and all, but really it's the minimum. So I didn't feel like a emotional sort of impact from it, but I feel both those moments, what the author, what the animators, etc., were trying for was some sort of emotional response, and it failed on both counts. So that of course is a -3, which then leaves us with an overall objective ranking for this episode at a 10. So it is still objectively a 10 out of 10 episode this time. And so we arrive at our final arc rankings for the first arc, the Romance Dawn arc. And for the mostly objective ranking list, it stands in first place, I'm Luffy, the man who will become the Pirate King. In second place, Morgan versus Luffy, who's this mysterious, beautiful young girl. And in third place, the great swordsman appears, pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro. Now, one thing to note is when two episodes within the same arc have the same objective score, they're ranked just in the order that they appear in, so in episode order, which is why the first episode is still in first place and this one has moved to second place. It hasn't unseated anything. And now we'll go over to the personal ranking. So, not quite a 10 out of 10 for me, but still a very likable episode. Obviously, the salute was nice, though it is kind of kind of some of that niceness is kind of lost from the fact that they also had just kicked them off of the island right before giving it. Zoro officially joining the crew, of course, is a milestone in the series. Luffy gets his first crewmate. The first one is Zoro. It's official. Kobe gets his dream, which again is nice, but not super impactful. There's a lot of talking and exposition in the second half, which kind of makes it a little more boring, like the first half all action, and then we're kind of just talking. Again, obviously, I've already mentioned, rude to kick out your saviors. The title doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mentioned before that it should have been Morgan versus Zoro, since Zoro is the one who gave the defeating blow. But there's also, who's this mysterious, beautiful young girl? We saw Nami for like 1, 2 scenes, like 30-second scenes, so short of a time. She didn't really have any actual impact on the episode or much of an introduction or anything. So, I think they just added that to make the title long because the series loves long titles for the episodes. But also it doesn't really make sense there, though that's not really going to impact my score at all. It's just something I wanted to call out. And then we have the hint at Buggy flashily stealing that Grand Line map. Now, Buggy is one of my favorite villains in this series, actually one of my favorite characters overall. Buggy he's a character, he brings a smile to your face even just thinking about him. He's an amazing character. I love Buggy. So the fact that he's hinted at, that we're going to be seeing him soon, automatically gives me like a very positive emotion going into the next episodes that are upcoming. And so overall, the feelings that I had for this episode, I decided to mark it an 8 out of 10, which brings my personal ranking to, in first place, Morgan versus Luffy, who's this mysterious, beautiful young girl. Second place, I'm Luffy, the man who will become the Pirate King. And then in third, we have the Great Swordsman appears, Pirate Hunter Roronoa Zoro. So now this is the first time that we've actually completed an arc. So we get to find out what our final score for this arc is going to be, and it's very exciting. So obviously this arc had 33 episodes, maximum score of 30. With the mostly objective, we now have a total score of 26 out of 30. And then on the personal side, we have a score of 20 out of 30. So the way that it works is we then create basically a percentage based on the final score. So on the mostly objective side, we now have a final score of 86.67%. And on our personal side, 66.67%. So now we get to introduce the series ranking. The series ranking for One Piece is where we're going to rank each saga against each other. I know it's a little bit complicated. I'm going a little far with the rankings, but they're my favorite part and I enjoy it. So let me have it. So now we're on the series ranking. This is newly introduced for this series. So basically, based on whatever the percentage range that we get for the overall arc is, we then are going to assign it a number value. So in the case of the mostly objective side, we had a score of 86.67%, which is between the 86 to 90% range. And so we are going to give that an objective score of 9 out of 10 for this arc. And then on the personal side, we then are only at 66.67%, which this falls between the 61 to 70 range, so it's getting just an average 5 out of 10 score. All right, so now we're on the series ranking so far. Within this saga, there is 8 arcs, which means that it can have a total score of 80. And now that we've completed the first arc, we now know that Romance Dawn arc is worth 9 out of 80, and on the personal side, it's 5 out of 80. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Romance Dawn arc, episode 3, Morgan versus Luffy, who's this mysterious, beautiful young girl. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.